how much David could a David Foster Wallace if a David Foster could foster Wallaces. I don't know about that, but I know about Infinite Jest. It's an infamous book, really long. Smart people are supposed to have read it, or at least that kid that you know that's really into Nietzsche talks about it sometimes, you think. I want to know what the book's all about. It's one of the few mega blockbuster door stopper intellectual novels that I haven't read for a first time yet. And I want to use my YouTube channel here as a chance to document my reading process. So come along with me. Today is the preface and chapter 1 of Infinite Jest. This series is dedicated to Little Werner Herzog. Little Werner Herzog read Infinite Jest before I did. He knows who he is. He's from Germany, specifically East Germany. And he got his nickname because my mother heard him on Discord once and thought he sounded like the director, one of my favorite directors. Also, check out the description, pre-order my short story novella, The Boomer. It's coming out on August 27th. It is a dramatic read, and it's a quick read. It's only 1/5 the length of The Great Gatsby. In many ways, Infinite Jest was the quintessential, intellectual read of the 2010s. I remember that book with the clouds on the cover kind of being this signifier of here is a big, hefty, hard to understand modern novel. In the 2020s, it still holds a place, but I feel like when it comes to like here's the big book that we all sit and we talk about, like very serious men, it's kind of been usurped by Blood Meridian, just because I see Zoomers talk about that book the way that millennials talked about Infinite Jest 10 years ago. And I think that Infinite Jest is a harder book to fake it till you make it when it comes to interpretation. Cormac McCarthy's Blood Meridian is a book that I like. I have an analysis of it on this very channel, but it is a novel that you can fake till you make it when it comes to, claiming to have read it. The book has its central symbol, the judge, and all interpretations of the novel must use the judge as a kind of compass, central to the understanding of the book. Meanwhile, Infinite Jest has all of these threads, and it's not, told in a straightforward style. Both have their complexities, but Infinite Jest is definitely a scattered narrative. It's also a colder read. The book does not deal with blood, anger, revenge, out on the Wild West, a classic American genre in any medium, literature, film. Just the image of the cowboy is so iconic. Many will search for any rendition in that canon of literature. Infinite Jest, it's in a medium that is just kind of thought of as like the big serious book. And I love that for it, and that's why I want to read it. Let's just get to my analysis. Today we're going to be going through chapter 1. I'm going to do a chapter by chapter breakdown of this book, and then maybe like a final summation analysis, going through all of my ideas, summarizing them, synthesizing them at the very end. Hold on that. We might just do that in the final video on the 28th chapter. We'll see how I'm feeling. The first few words on the first page of the first chapter read, Year of Glad. I am seated in an office, surrounded by heads and bodies. Year of Glad refers to the year that this chapter is taking place in. Each chapter has one of these headers, the year of something, and famously, this book takes place in a vague, near future dystopia where brands have completely consumed culture to where even the years are sponsored by specific brands. So, for instance, next year, 2027, if we were in this universe, could very well have the name the year of the Hershey bar if the Hershey bar were to sponsor it. Now, notice how the text plays a little trick on you, where, say, if you were to go into this book with no info whatsoever, that title header, Year of Glad, well, glad you wouldn't necessarily associate with a brand. Once you go and you eventually get to the chapter of the year of a brand of incontinence pads, I haven't gotten there yet, but I know that one is sponsored by an incontinence pad. You'll realize that, oh, looking back, Glad means the cleaning product brand. um and of course, the irony of this chapter, which is about a young man, Hal, flunking his interview into a prestigious college. There's an irony, Morissettian. There's Morissettian irony in that taking place during the year of Glad, this happy emotion. That moment with the year of Glad and advertising language covering something, extremely dark, reminds me immediately of the Choose Life monologue from Train Spotting, which, of course, in the book is riffing on a very famous, anti drug campaign in Scotland, and all the while has a peppy song, Iggy Pop's Lust for Life, which was used in commercials in the 1990s, unbeknownst to the ad executives who just wanted to reference a rebellious 70s punk jam. It's a song about the day to day dread and dreg of addiction. Another theme in Infinite Jest. But then that opening sentence, I am seated in an office, surrounded by heads and bodies. That second half of the sentence is what's odd and disjointed. It kind of sticks out to you and is purposeful, in my opinion, since David Foster Wallace was an infamous, grammar. So he wasn't going to make an unsmooth sentence accidentally. That first half tells you that this is the first person, this is somebody's head that you've been shoved into. I am seated in an office. But that other half, the janky half, surrounded by heads and bodies, our narrator Hal doesn't want to say surrounded by people. He objectifies those around him. As we go on, we're going to learn that he's nervous to the point of a breakdown in front of his interview, staff. But it almost seems, right from the start, that the novel wants you to know. Its narrator is so desperate to distance himself from that human connection that he is willing to depersonalize even the persons around him. That style with the sentence structure of distancing the person and placing people as these objects at the end of the narrator's thoughts immediately remind me of J.D. Salinger's style of writing, especially in The Catcher in the Rye. There's a famous paragraph where Holden Caulfield gives you a beautiful story about a baseball mitt, and then quickly ends it with just a small mention that the brother who owned that baseball mitt is dead now. Anyhow, let's move on. It's heartbreaking, and it shows in the way that that paragraph functions that Holden, his narration, his mind, still has these thoughts of his brother on the brain, but they have to be distanced. Salinger was a big writer for the Gen Xers just as much as he was a groundbreaking influence on the baby boomers' artistic output. And Salinger, while he's mostly known for Holden Caulfield, his the biggest, set of characters from his oeuvre, however you say that, are the Glass family, a group of intellectual East Coast, this family that are not so unlike Hal's own family in Infinite Jest, who are the central characters. Dysfunction. Just as the book doesn't tell you that the chapter titles come from the advertisers sponsoring the years, it also doesn't tell you that it is starting with the final scene of a jumbled up timeline that makes up the entire book. This whole thing is told out of order and it skips around. I'm thinking that this reminds me of a jumbled up memory, but also I can't help but be reminded of the Greek epics. Now, who knows if this was intentional on good old DFW's part, but the Greek epics would always tell you at the very beginning, this is what happened. It was the Trojan War. The Romans defeated the Trojans. This and this happened, and now you're with so and so. You knew what was going to happen from the first few words of the story in the Greek and Roman epics. Meanwhile, in this novel, and one of the most famous postmodern novels, it's considered this grand postmodern gesture to start at the very end. And yet it's a signal of tradition. The size of the book and the amount of detail remind me of Ulysses, of course, which references Greek and Roman art and is based around the Odyssey. But with the Infinite Jest videotape in the book being the, kind of the MacGuffin, the central piece, the holy grail that everyone is searching for. I I don't know if this is on David Foster Wallace's mind, but it's almost like you've picked up the book and it, as a representation of a videotape, is a videotape that has yet to be rewound. So sometimes you would pick up a videotape from the store and you were renting it, so several people had had it beforehand, but they would forget to rewind it. And maybe this final scene, being the first one that you see, is us accidentally starting the tape without rewinding it first. The distancing effect of the language is often thrown back as a negative aspect in David Foster Wallace, but it isn't pointless. The distance and the attention to detail is a desire to keep the human at an arm's length. A little farther down the first page, there is the following. I have committed to crossing my legs, I hope carefully, ankle on knee, hands together in the lap of my slacks. My fingers are mated into a mirrored series of what manifests to me as the letter X. The interview room's other personnel include the university director of composition, its varsity tennis coach, and academic proctor, Mr. A. Delint, CT, is beside me. The others sit, stand, and stand respectively at the periphery of my focus. The tennis coach jingles pocket change. There is something vaguely digestive about the room's odor. The high traction sole of my complimentary Nike sneaker runs parallel to the wobbling loafer of my mom's half brother, here in his capacity as headmaster, sitting in the chair to what I hope is my immediate right, also facing Dean's. That long, drawn out description, the biggest paragraph on the first page, is Hal taking in everything that he can and kind of giving you this unnecessary rundown of every little gesture, sitting position of the people around him. It's a sign of his nerves. People who are nervous take stock of that. Oh, so and so is moving that way. Is that how this is? Are they? What about? It's a very human reaction, but that veneer of detail keeps people from relating to the raw nervousness in this first chapter of the text. A quick aside detail that I don't think was David Foster Wallace's intent at all is Hal's name. The narrator of that first chapter, the young man who fails to, uh, you know, ace his college entrance interview. Analyzing the name of a character can be cheap analysis, but I know that David Foster Wallace was inspired by Thomas Pynchon, who often picked very quirky names without, giving us any explanation for really anything about any of his books, because he barely gave any interviews, even less so than J.D. Salinger. But the, sh- the name Hal gives me two references in my mind. Stanley Kubrick would have been a big deal in the late 20th century and into the early 20th century, especially in film studies. He was kind of overtaking the spot that Hitchcock had and that I guess David Lynch has now. A guy that's going to come up in a future chapter analysis just because David Foster Wallace interviewed him. But Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey is still considered a masterpiece, second on the British Film Institute's, greatest films of all time list. The computer in 2001: A Space Odyssey is named Hal. So you have this connection with the computer, with this modern object. Though David Foster Wallace was more writing Infinite Jest about television, it's interesting to consider that his works now would be more interpreted as kind of predicting the onslaught of computers and social media on our modern times. The other reference that I see, and don't assume any intention on Wallace's part with this, is Shakespeare's Henry V plays, which were history plays about one of the ancestors of the then Queen Elizabeth I, and Henry V, aka King, Prince Hal, was historically famous because he transitioned the courts from the English courts spoke English. They were no longer going to speak French. And so that old communication connecting with the new communication of the computers in this one character. So, this has been me documenting my thoughts on chapter 1 of Infinite Jest, but hold on, because next week we're going to be talking about chapter 2 and trying to connect it with chapter 1. So, like and subscribe, and don't forget, pre order the Boomer. Things will come together just as they are coming together in Infinite Jest. It doesn't always start out with full understanding. I have to churn out the notes and then we'll make a tapestry of understanding. I'm looking forward to chapter 2 next week.